Hello and welcome. In one of my previous videos that you're seeing here, we looked at the trend in the 1960s of rear engine high capacity single decker buses. As I mentioned in the video, these became very popular as one person operated single decker buses had become legal before one person operated double decker buses. And it was believed that a lot of these single deckers would hold the same amount of passengers as, say, an RT or a Route Master. But of course that was including around 20 standing passengers. At the end of the 1960s, this trend for single-decker buses led British Leyland to look into the development of the Leyland National. This was going to be an integrally built vehicle along the same lines as a car, with everything being built under one roof, to a very standard design. But all that standardisation would come at a price, and a lot of the independent bus bodybuilders were worried about the impact this would have on their business, the likes of Alexander, Northern Counties and Metro Camel Wayman. It's worth mentioning at this time that Rowe, Park Royal and Eastern Coachworks were under the British Leyland banner. So while they may also have been a little bit concerned by the advent of the Leyland National, they were a little bit more restricted on what actions they could take. Metro Camel Wayman, on the other hand, wasn't, and they decided that they wanted a slice of that high-capacity rear-engine single-decker bus market. The route they would go down would see them team up with Swedish firm Scania. In its homeland, Scania had been building buses for decades, and these were proving very popular in mainland Europe. But in the UK at that time, it was a totally different story, with the majority of the buses being British-built. So it might seem a bit of a strange choice for Metro Camel Wayman to go into a partnership with a Swedish company that wasn't selling buses in the UK. But when you think of it, the majority of the major UK manufacturers such as Daimler, AEC and Bristol, they were under British Leyland control, so could hardly be expected to team up with MCW to build a rival bus for the Leyland National. This left Dennis of Guildford, and at the time Dennis weren't building passenger vehicles. And you can imagine that the expense of developing a chassis specifically for a single-decker bus for MCW to body would have pushed the cost of the project right up. Scania, meanwhile, already had an appropriate passenger chassis in production, the BR110. And it was this that was to form the basis for the Metro Scania partnership, with Scania supplying these chassis and running units while MCW would build the semi-integral bodywork. The new bus would be 11 metres long and would feature air suspension and a hydraulic torque converter gearbox. The first two were built in November 1969 and were registered VWD 451H and VWD 452H. These buses were used as demonstrators for many operators, including London Transport. For the time, the bodywork was very modern and futuristic, although on the first 20-odd vehicles the bodywork was actually on Scania frames and featured a more rounder rear end. And you have to admit, when you look at this picture, it certainly does have that continental appearance on the back of the bus, doesn't it? The bodywork was steel framed and the front end featured the asymmetric windscreen, which was to become a feature of the MCW bodywork over the next 18 years. Production of the Metro Scania started in 1971, with the first of 16 buses for Leicester being delivered in April 1971. Whilst the prototypes and demonstrators had been to the BR110 type, the production buses were to the BR111 chassis specification. Both Leicester City Bus and Newport Corporation went on to build up the biggest fleets of Metro Scanias in the UK. Which, saying that, wasn't actually a huge amount because there was only 133 Metro Scanias built during the production run. And that production run ended in 1973. So from the word go, the bus didn't have a particularly long life. Later bodies were built wholly by MCW rather than being built on Scania framework, and this allowed the window spacing to be altered slightly. Other notable batches of Metro Scanias were 20 for Merseyside, and Selneck, which was the predecessor to Greater Manchester Transport, took the lucky number of 13. Several Metro Scanias were fitted out to what they called the Hush Bus standard, where they actually had all engine encapsulation and a special exhaust pipe, and this brought the engine noise down to 77 decibels. MCW's local operator West Midlands PTE only took one bus. Now when you consider how many MCW bodied fleet lines they'd taken and how many MCW metro buses they would take, this is actually quite surprising. Equally surprising were the 3 that were delivered to King Alfred Motor Services of Winchester in 1971. Although these had a very short life in Winchester, and when Hanson Dorset took over King Alfred, they were transferred to London Country in exchange for some Leyland Nationals. London Country used them at Stevenage on the Superbus network, and they were operated alongside 4 native brand new examples, and wore this rather stunning blue and yellow livery. The Superbus Metro Scanias operated alongside suitably decorated Swifts and Leyland Nationals, but again didn't have a particularly long life, being withdrawn in 1977-78 and scrapped by 1980. London Transport meanwhile had realised that it had had enough of its AEC Swifts and Merlins, and was looking at a new single-decker to replace them, even though they were only a few years old themselves. They ordered 6 Metro Scanias, which were to go head-to-head in trials against 6 Leyland Nationals, and all of these arrived in July 1973. All the London Transport Metro Scanias went to work at Dalston Garage, where they worked on the S2 service between Bromley Station and Clapton Pond. Now, the one thing I've not mentioned about the Metro Scania yet is its speed. They were incredibly fast for their time, probably comparable to a modern bus in that respect. And on the first day in service, Metro Scania 4 ended up actually in Clapton Pond, which probably didn't do a lot for either the driver's career or the bus. 5 of the London buses were later sold to Newport Corporation in 1978. Production of the Metro Scania ended with the delivery of PKG 869M to Pontypridd in December 1973. This was the only one to receive an M registration and was actually badged as a Metropolitan. Unfortunately, in 1973, the Suez crisis pushed the price of oil up, and Metro Scanias weren't known for their fuel economy. They were actually quite juicy buses by comparison with the buses of the time. Coupled to the failure rate of the gearbox and torque converter and the inability to get spare parts, as well as the more publicised problems with excessive corrosion, led to most Metro Scanias having incredibly short lives. In fact, it was only Newport and Leicester City Bus that showed any real love for the type, and by the mid-1980s the type was virtually extinct. As a result, very few made it into preservation. I believe there's 4 or 5 that are preserved in the UK. And out of that 4 or 5, I believe one of them is being used for spare parts. So if you do see a Metro Scania at a running day or a bus rally, take an opportunity to ride on it, because it is a very, very rare beast nowadays. So you may well think it was a bit of a failure for the Metro Scania, but it actually wasn't when you think about it. Scania and MCW teamed up to build the Metropolitan double-decker, which was pretty much about as double-decker version of the Metro Scania as you could get. And this kind of emphasised the fact that the single-decker bus was slipping into the background a little bit, and the double-decker bus was coming back into fashion. The Metro Scania and the Metropolitan went on to lay the foundations for the Metro bus, which did prove to be a thorn in the side of British Leyland, and established MCW as a builder of modern buses in its own right. It also gave Scania a foothold in the UK market. And you don't need me to tell you how well things are going for Scania in the UK at the moment, do you? So I think it's a bit harsh to say the Metro Scania was a failure. I think it was just born at the wrong time when single deckers were starting to slip out of favour and fuel prices were going through the roof. Thanks for watching this Swedish styled version of Classic Bus Histories. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and share the video, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel as it helps the channel grow and you'll receive notifications of when I release further videos in this series. And speaking of further videos, don't forget to check out the other videos on my channel. There's plenty there to keep you occupied during those rainy days that you get over the course of the summer. And there's all sorts of things that will appeal to bus enthusiasts of good taste just like yourself. So it just remains for me to say thanks very much for watching. Bye for now.